What if I told you that some of Hollywood's most glamorous icons weren't just hiding secrets in their dressing rooms, they were living entirely double lives? Behind the dazzling premieres, the fan magazines, and the carefully staged romances, there were letters that never saw the light of day, marriages arranged to keep rumors silent, and even espionage missions straight out of a spy thriller. This is the story of 10 Golden Age stars who lived not one, but two lives. And by the end of this video, you'll never see Hollywood the same way again. So, if you love uncovering the hidden shadows behind the golden glow, consider subscribing. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss the stories Hollywood tried hardest to bury. 10. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo's image was one of mystery. The Swedish-born actress became a worldwide icon in the 1922nd and 32nd, known for her magnetic gaze and the unforgettable line, "I want to be alone." But while audiences imagined her as the most untouchable star of the Golden Age, Garbo was quietly cultivating a private life that Hollywood and the world was never supposed to see. Hidden away in boxes and archives were letters written by Garbo to her longtime friend and rumored lover Mercedes D'Acosta. The letters revealed a side of Garbo that never appeared in newsreels or fan magazines. Words of intimacy, longing, and emotional connection that painted a far more complex picture than the Ice Queen persona crafted by MGM. When portions of these letters were eventually displayed at the Rosenbach Museum, they reignited debates about who Garbo truly was. To some, they confirmed decades of speculation about her sexuality. To others, they were a reminder of how fiercely she protected her inner world from Hollywood's prying eyes. But the double life wasn't only about romance. Garbo famously refused interviews, dodged Hollywood's social scenes, and became almost a phantom figure in New York after retiring in 1941. Paparazzi chased her down streets, capturing grainy photos of a woman who seemed to be both everywhere and nowhere at once. For the public, it was a frustrating enigma. For Garbo, it was survival, an escape from the spotlight's suffocating control. Her silence became her most powerful statement. While other stars clung to fading fame, Garbo vanished into self-imposed exile, leaving fans to wonder endlessly about the life she lived in the shadows. Was it a tragedy, or was it liberation? The truth may never be fully known, but that's exactly why Garbo remains one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. And if you think her carefully guarded double life was shocking, wait until you see who's next on this list. 9. Cary Grant. Cary Grant was the ultimate Hollywood leading man, suave, sophisticated, and impossibly charming. To audiences in the 1932nd and 42nd, he was the model of masculine perfection. Studio executives marketed him as the eternal bachelor, an image that sold tickets, headlines, and dreams. But off-screen, Grant was quietly living another life, one that could never be acknowledged in public. For nearly a decade, Grant shared a home with fellow actor Randolph Scott. The two were photographed on the beach together, lounging shirtless or cooking meals in what the press cheekily called Bachelor Hall. At the time, these images seemed like harmless publicity shots. But as decades passed, historians began to reevaluate them. Was this simply a friendship magnified by studio publicity, or was it evidence of a far more intimate relationship carefully shielded by the Hollywood machine? The truth was complicated. Biographers pointed to a pattern of lavender marriages arranged for stars whose personal lives didn't fit the rigid morality code of the era. Grant himself would marry 5 times throughout his life, but the bond with Scott lingered in gossip columns and whispered conversations long after their cohabitation ended. To the public, he remained the ultimate ladies' man. To insiders, he was a man negotiating 2 competing realities. The duality followed Grant for decades. Even in later years, he bristled at questions about his sexuality, dismissing them with sharp humor or silence. Yet the photographs of Bachelor Hall remain rare glimpses of a Hollywood that pretended not to exist. What makes Grant's double life so compelling is not just the secrecy, but the performance. On screen, he embodied the perfect romantic partner. Off screen, he was navigating a personal truth that the system forced underground. It wasn't just Cary Grant the actor, it was Cary Grant the character carefully curated for the world to believe. And if you think the King of Charm had secrets, the next star's story will make even Hitchcock's Psycho look tame. 8. Anthony Perkins. When Anthony Perkins stepped onto the screen as Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho 1960, he became immortal. His nervous charm and chilling transformation made audiences shiver. But while the world fixated on his eerie performance, Perkins himself was quietly navigating a far more complicated role, one Hollywood demanded he keep hidden. Perkins was romantically involved with several men throughout his life, including a deeply personal relationship with fellow actor Tab Hunter. At a time when same-sex relationships could end a career overnight, their romance existed in stolen moments and hidden encounters. Hunter later revealed how they were forced to keep everything under wraps, their affection veiled by studio contracts and relentless gossip magazines. For Perkins, every smile on the red carpet was an act of survival. The secrecy took its toll. Perkins was described as shy, even tortured when it came to love. Friends remembered him as a man caught between yearning for connection and fearing exposure. Hollywood rewarded his talent but demanded silence about his personal truth. Unlike his character in Psycho, Perkins was not monstrous. He was simply a man in a system that punished authenticity. The irony is almost cruel. Perkins was typecast as fragile, repressed outsiders, roles that mirrored his own hidden battles. He played them brilliantly because he understood them intimately. Yet even as he became a household name, his personal life was reduced to whispers in backrooms and blinds in fan magazines. In later years, Perkins married photographer Barry Berenson and had 2 sons, building a family life that looked picture-perfect. But even then, the shadow of Hollywood's silence lingered. His death from AIDS in 1992 revealed another double life, one marked not by shame but by the tragedy of a man never fully allowed to live openly. Perkins' story reminds us that behind one of cinema's most terrifying villains stood a gentle, complicated soul who had to hide too much. And if his struggles seem heartbreaking, the next star's tale shows just how far Hollywood would go to script an entire life from beginning to end. 7. Tab Hunter. In the 1952nd, Tab Hunter was the dream. Blonde, athletic, and impossibly handsome. He was Hollywood's answer to the question, what does perfection look like? He starred in beach, movies, westerns, and musicals, his clean-cut image plastered across fan magazines and teen bedroom walls. To millions, he was the all-American boy, charming, wholesome, and unshakably straight. But behind that gleaming smile, Hunter was carrying a secret that the studio system would do anything to bury. Hunter was gay in an era when those 3 words could end a career before it began. Under Warner Brothers, his private life was micromanaged, his every date arranged, his every move scrutinized. Publicists set him up with female co-stars for staged photos, carefully constructing a narrative of a heartthrob every girl wanted. Meanwhile, Hunter was building real relationships in the shadows, most notably with Anthony Perkins, the man who would forever be remembered as Norman Bates. Their romance was passionate but perilous. Perkins under Paramount's control and Hunter under Warner's were often pushed apart by studios terrified of exposure. Confidential magazine, the notorious gossip rag, loomed like a sword over them, both eager to print any hint of scandal. For Hunter, one outing could mean the collapse of everything he'd worked for. That fear forced him to smile wider, pose longer, and hide deeper. In 1955, that nightmare almost came true. Hunter was arrested at a gay party in Los Angeles, and Confidential caught wind of it. The story could have destroyed him, but Warner Brothers pulled strings, redirected headlines, and rushed him into a publicity romance with Natalie Wood. Tab and Natalie were suddenly the golden couple, photographed at premieres, dances, and even in staged candid moments. The public bought the illusion, never suspecting that it was Hollywood itself writing the script. Privately, Hunter longed for freedom. He later admitted in interviews in his autobiography, Tab Hunter Confidential, that living 2 lives took a toll. He felt like a prisoner of his own image, famous, adored, but never truly known. I was living a lie, he confessed. And yet, despite it all, he kept working, kept performing, and even recorded a #1 hit single, Young Love, that only deepened his image as America's sweetheart. It wasn't until decades later, when Hunter published his memoir and the documentary Tab Hunter Confidential premiered, that the mask came off. By then, times had changed, and audiences could finally see the man behind the illusion without judgment. The double life was no longer a source of shame. It was a testament to his resilience in a ruthless industry. Tab Hunter's story is one of survival. He was forced into a role far more demanding than any movie part, the role of Hollywood's perfect boy next door. But inside, he was simply a man who wanted to live and love freely. His double life may have been scripted by the studios, but his truth outlasted them all. And if Tab Hunter's carefully managed image shocks, you just wait until we reach Montgomery Clift, the star whose fragile brilliance became Hollywood's most tragic myth. 6. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift wasn't just an actor, he was a phenomenon. When he appeared in A Place in the Sun, 1951 audiences were mesmerized. His performance was raw, delicate, and unlike anything the studio system had ever manufactured. Alongside Brando and Dean, Clift embodied the new method actor, intense, vulnerable, electric. But while the world saw him as a tortured genius on-screen, off-screen, Clift was living a double life that proved even more heartbreaking than his roles. Clift's sexuality was the first secret Hollywood forced underground. He was gay and bisexual in an era where even whispers could end a career. Friends knew, colleagues suspected, but the studios demanded silence. To the public, he was linked to Elizabeth Taylor, his closest confidant. Their deep friendship spun into a false romance for the magazines. In truth, Taylor became his protector, shielding him from gossip and offering the unconditional love he could never find in a Hollywood spotlight. The second secret was his dependence on painkillers and alcohol, a spiral that began after the infamous 1956 car accident. One night, leaving Taylor's home, he crashed into a telephone pole. His face was shattered, his jaw broken, his appearance forever changed. Taylor herself rushed to the wreckage, pulling him out and preventing him from choking on his teeth. In an instant, Cliff's matinee idol beauty was gone. What followed was a slow, painful decline. Studios struggled to insure him. Directors whispered that he was unreliable. Friends recalled a man increasingly fragile, yet still capable of brilliance when the camera rolled. He delivered searing performances in Suddenly Last Summer, 1959, and The Misfits, 1961. But behind the scenes, his addictions deepened. Hollywood's golden boy had become, in the cruel words of one biographer, the longest suicide in movie history. But the double life was more than tragedy, it was myth-making. Cliff wasn't simply destroyed by alcohol, drugs, or forbidden love. He was destroyed by an industry that prized image over humanity. The method he embodied was never just acting. It was survival, channeling his own repressed pain into characters who felt real because they were real. Every tear, every tremor, every haunted glance, those were Cliff's truths leaking through the cracks of his double existence. And yet, even in his darkest years, people adored him. Taylor never left his side. Younger actors revered him as a pioneer who broke Hollywood's rigid mold. Today, documentaries like Making Montgomery Clift challenge the narrative of a man doomed by shame, instead celebrating him as someone who fought fiercely against the lies others wrote for him. Montgomery Clift's double life wasn't just about hiding. It was about resilience in a world unwilling to accept him fully. He was fragile, yes, but he was also fearless, standing at the edge of Hollywood's illusions and refusing to step back. His story is not only tragic, it's unforgettable. And if Cliff's downfall left you shaken, Ramon Novarro's fate will show you how deadly Hollywood's silence could truly become. 5. Ramon Novarro. In the 1922nd, Ramon Novarro was one of MGM's brightest stars. Born in Mexico, he rose from bit parts to lead roles, eventually replacing Rudolph Valentino as Hollywood's premier Latin lover. With his matinee idol looks and magnetic presence, Novarro became a global sensation, most famously in the epic Ben-Hur, 1925s/. To audiences, he was the embodiment of romance and virility. But behind the silver screen, Novarro's reality was a dangerous balancing act, one that ended in violence. Novarro was gay, a fact known among close friends, but hidden from the public under a carefully managed image. In an industry obsessed with rigid morality, being openly queer was unthinkable. MGM executives arranged dates with women for the press, ensuring that Novarro's name stayed untarnished in gossip columns. Yet he lived privately with lovers and confidants, constantly aware that exposure could destroy everything. His Catholic upbringing added another layer of torment, leaving him torn between faith, fame, and desire. By the 1932nd, the rise of sound films and changing tastes dimmed Novarro's star. Unlike Valentino, whose early death preserved his legend, Novarro lived long enough to face the cruelty of Hollywood's forgetfulness. He continued acting mostly in minor roles while becoming increasingly reclusive. Still within the LGBTQ community of Los Angeles, Novarro was a quiet icon, proof that even at the height of the studio system, men like him had existed, though never acknowledged. The most chilling chapter of his double life came decades later. On Halloween night in 1968, two young men, Paul and Tom Ferguson, arrived at Novarro's home. They believed, based on rumors, that the aging star kept thousands of dollars hidden in his house. When they found nothing, the encounter turned brutal. Novarro was tortured, beaten, and left to choke to death. He was 69 years old. The tabloids devoured the story. Instead of honoring his career headlines, sensationalized his sexuality and the lurid details of the murder. Confidential-style reporting painted him not as a victim of violence, but as a scandalous figure whose private life had finally caught up with him. It was the cruelest possible end for a man who had spent his life navigating the treacherous divide between who he was and who Hollywood demanded him to be. Yet Novarro's legacy refuses to be erased. In recent years, LGBTQ historians have reframed his story not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to survival in an unforgiving era. His performances in silent cinema remain breathtaking, his charisma undeniable. The tragedy of his death only underscores the price he paid for living a double life in a world that offered him no safe space. Ramon Novarro was more than a headline, more than a scandal. He was a pioneer forced into silence, a symbol of Hollywood's cruelty and its hypocrisy. His life reminds us that behind every idolized image was a human being vulnerable and complex. And as tragic as Novarro's end was, Marlene Dietrich's story shows another path, a double life, not defined by shame, but by defiance and power. 4. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich was unlike anyone else in Hollywood. With her husky voice, piercing gaze, and androgynous fashion, she defied every rule the Golden Age tried to impose. She became an international star with The Blue Angel, 1930, then stormed into Hollywood as Paramount's most exotic weapon against MGM's Greta Garbo. To the public, she was the ultimate seductress, an untouchable femme fatale draped in satin and shadow. But the truth is that Dietrich lived not one life, but two, splitting herself between glamorous icon and political rebel. On screen, she was the fantasy of every man. Off-screen, she openly challenged gender norms, wearing men's suits with effortless confidence. At a time when homosexuality was demonized, she carried on relationships with both men and women, counting among her rumored lovers not only leading actors, but also influential women in art and politics. Hollywood hushed the whispers, but Dietrich flaunted her duality, turning it into part of her legend. Her double life extended far beyond love affairs. During World War II, Dietrich took a stand that set her apart from many of her peers. She despised the Nazi regime, and unlike some German-born stars who stayed silent, she put her career on the line. She became an American citizen, joined the USO tours, and performed for Allied soldiers on the front lines. Sometimes she sang in English, sometimes in German. Her haunting rendition of Lily Marlene could make entire camps fall silent. The contrast was staggering. One day she dazzled in Parisian cabarets. The next she was slogging through mud to sing for exhausted troops. She endured real danger, sniper fire, bombings, frostbite. For these acts of courage, she received the Medal of Freedom in 1947. Few Hollywood stars had ever lived a double life so literally adored, movie goddess by night, battlefront morale, officer by day. And still she maintained the myth. Dietrich carefully controlled her image, collaborating with photographers to sculpt the aura of an ageless, mysterious woman. Fans saw glamour. Insiders saw discipline bordering on obsession. She once said, "I dress for the image. Not for myself, not for the public, not for fashion, not for men." Every choice, whether a tuxedo on a red carpet or a trench coat in a war zone, was calculated a performance in her lifelong theater of illusion. Dietrich's double life was not born of fear, but of defiance. She refused to let Hollywood or Hitler or anyone else dictate who she should be. She reinvented herself as often as necessary, leaving behind a legacy of contradictions that still fascinate scholars and fans alike. She proved that an icon could be both glamorous and political, both lover and fighter, both myth and reality. Marlene Dietrich didn't just survive Hollywood's rules, she rewrote them. And if you think her fearless duality was shocking, just wait until you hear about Sterling Hayden, the leading man who traded fame for the shadows of espionage. 3. Sterling Hayden. Sterling Hayden had the kind of rugged masculinity that Hollywood adored. Towering at 6'5" with a sailor's build and piercing eyes, he became the archetype of the hard-boiled noir hero in films like The Asphalt Jungle 1950 and Johnny Guitar 1954-19. To the public, he was the ultimate tough guy, equal parts cowboy, gangster, and heartthrob. Yet Hayden lived a double life, so unbelievable it could have been a screenplay while billed as a rising star. He was secretly risking his life as an undercover agent in World War II. Before Hollywood, Hayden was a sailor, restless and drawn to the sea. When the war broke out, he left, acting behind, and joined the Marine Corps. Soon he was recruited into the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS precursor to the CIA. Under the code name John Hamilton, Hayden carried out covert missions in Europe. He smuggled supplies across enemy lines, coordinated resistance fighters in fascist-occupied Yugoslavia, and even parachuted into war zones. For his courage, he was awarded the Silver Star and the Bronze Arrowhead. While his fellow actors were memorizing lines, Hayden was memorizing radio codes. His double existence was staggering. One-moment posters plastered his face across America as Hollywood's newest tough guy. The next, he was navigating icy waters to deliver arms to partisans battling Nazis. He later admitted that no film role could match the raw danger and meaning of those missions. After the war, Hayden reluctantly returned to Hollywood, but he carried scars that no makeup could hide. He drank heavily, clashed with studio bosses, and often ridiculed the very industry that had made him rich. In interviews, he confessed he despised acting, calling it child's play compared to the life or death stakes of espionage. He even wrote a searing autobiography, Wanderer, where he laid bare his contempt for fame and his longing for authenticity. The tension between his two worlds never fully resolved. During the Red Scare of the 1952nd, Hayden briefly cooperated with HUAC, naming names in testimony that haunted him for the rest of his life. Here was the war hero, now branded a betrayer. It was another twist in his double life, the fearless spy who had risked everything for freedom, now trapped in a political circus. What makes Hayden's story so compelling is the sense that he never belonged to Hollywood at all. He was too restless, too conflicted, too honest. Acting paid the bills, but the sea and the shadows called louder. He walked away from stardom more than once, preferring obscurity on a sailboat to riches on a soundstage. Sterling Hayden's double life wasn't a scandal in the tabloid sense, it was larger than life. He proved that some stars weren't just pretending to be heroes on screen. They were heroes in reality, forced to play down their greatest roles. And if Hayden's wartime secrets seem astonishing, wait until you meet Hedy Lamarr, the silver screen goddess whose second life gave us the very technology powering your phone today. 2. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was called the most beautiful woman in the world. With raven dark hair, porcelain skin, and a hypnotic stare, she captivated audiences in the 1932nd and 42nd. Hollywood cast her as exotic seductresses, queens, and temptresses, roles that relied entirely on her beauty. To the public, Lamarr was pure glamour, an untouchable goddess projected 20 feet high. But behind the costumes and jewels, she lived a double life, more astonishing than any movie plot. Hedy Lamarr was also a brilliant inventor years ahead of her time. Born Hedwig Kiesler in Vienna, she had already shocked Europe with her daring performance in Ecstasy, 1933, before escaping her controlling husband, an arms dealer linked to the Nazis. She fled to Hollywood, where MGM transformed her into a legend. Yet in private, Lamarr's mind was consumed not with fame, but with science. She kept a drafting table in her home, tinkering with blueprints between shoots. While studio bosses obsessed over lighting her face, she obsessed over solving problems of mechanics and communication. Her greatest contribution came during World War II. Teaming up with composer George Antheil Lamarr, co-invented a frequency-hopping communication system designed to prevent enemy forces from jamming Allied torpedo signals. The principle was radical transmit signals by jumping across different frequencies in synchronization, making interception nearly impossible. In 1942, they received U.S. patent number 2292387. Though the Navy initially shelved the invention decades later, the same principle became foundational for technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Think about that. While Hollywood sold her image as a bombshell, Lamarr was quietly inventing the technology that powers the devices in your pocket today. Yet at the time, few took her seriously. Male engineers dismissed her ideas, and studio executives preferred to showcase her in gowns rather than laboratories. Any girl can be glamorous, she once quipped. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid. It was her sharpest act of defiance because she was anything but stupid. Her double life grew even more poignant as her career declined. By the 1952nd, younger stars replaced her, and she withdrew from the spotlight. Financial troubles and failed marriages left her isolated, but her inventions endured quietly, shaping the modern world. Only in the 1992nd did she finally receive recognition from the scientific community, honored with awards she should have earned half a century earlier. Hedy Lamarr's story is a reminder that Hollywood's obsession with beauty often blinds it to deeper brilliance. She wasn't just a screen siren. She was an innovator who changed the way humanity communicates. The irony is painful. Audiences adored her face, but ignored her mind. Today both are remembered, but it took far too long for the world to honor the genius hidden beneath the glamour. And if Hedy Lamarr's double life sounds revolutionary, just wait for our #1 star, Rock Hudson, the man whose carefully guarded secret shook Hollywood and the world to its core. 1. Rock Hudson. In the 1952nd, Rock Hudson was the crown jewel of Hollywood masculinity. Towering, broad-shouldered, and effortlessly charming, he was the leading man every studio dreamed of. Audiences adored him in films like Magnificent Obsession, 1000, 954, and Giant 1956, where he played the rugged hero or the romantic ideal. He embodied the post-war American fantasy strength, stability, and heterosexual perfection. But behind the carefully curated image, Hudson was living the most dangerous double life of all, one that, when exposed, changed Hollywood and America forever. Hudson was gay at a time when the word itself was a career death sentence. His studio Universal worked tirelessly to protect his secret. Publicists staged romances with female co-stars. Photographers captured him at scripted dates, and eventually a marriage to his secretary Phyllis Gates was arranged, what many later called a lavender marriage. To the outside world, Hudson was the ultimate ladies' man. In reality, he navigated clandestine relationships, trusting only a small circle of friends. This deception weighed heavily. Hudson's colleagues often remarked on his loneliness, his need to compartmentalize every part of his life. For decades, tabloids whispered, but no one dared publish the truth. His image was too valuable, his career too profitable. He was Hollywood's great illusion, playing a role both on and off the screen. The facade collapsed in 1985. When Hudson publicly revealed he had AIDS, the announcement sent shockwaves across the globe. He was the first major celebrity to come forward with the disease at a time when misinformation and stigma were rampant. For years, AIDS had been dismissed as a distant, shameful crisis. Suddenly, it had a face, America's most beloved leading man. His disclosure shattered stereotypes, forcing the public to confront the reality of the epidemic. Politicians who had ignored the crisis were pressured into action. Millions who had never spoken about AIDS began to. Hudson's confession was more than personal, it was historic. By admitting the truth, he sacrificed the carefully guarded image that had defined him for decades. Some fans were heartbroken, others supportive, but the impact was undeniable. He transformed the conversation about AIDS, giving it visibility and urgency no activist alone could have achieved. In his final days, Hudson found solace in friendships, particularly with Elizabeth Taylor, who became one of the fiercest advocates for AIDS research after his death. When he passed in October 1985, he was mourned not just as a movie star, but as a symbol of courage in the face of silence. Rock Hudson's double life was the most tragic of all. For decades, he played Hollywood's perfect man, hiding his truth. Yet in his final act, he broke free of that illusion, and in doing so, helped change the world. His story remains the ultimate reminder that behind the golden glow of old Hollywood, real lives, real struggles were being lived in the shadows. So there you have it, 10 Golden Age stars who lived not one life but two. Behind the glittering premieres and the fan magazine covers, they carried secrets that ranged from hidden loves to groundbreaking inventions, from quiet acts of rebellion to world-changing revelations. These double lives remind us that Hollywood's golden glow was always an illusion crafted by studios, guarded by publicists, and often paid for with silence and pain. But there's something profoundly human about these stories too. Greta Garbo's letters, Cary Grant's Bachelor Hall, Hedy Lamar's forgotten brilliance, Rock Hudson's final confession, each reveals how much was sacrificed for survival and how much strength it took simply to exist under the crushing weight of fame. And maybe that's why we're still fascinated, because beneath the carefully constructed myths, these stars were as flawed, fragile, and complex as any of us, only their struggles played out under the brightest lights in the world. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden truths behind old Hollywood, don't let this be the last story you hear. Subscribe, leave a like, and tell us in the comments which star's double life shocked you the most. The next tale may surprise you even more.